All right. Yeah, looks like we're live. All right. Well, howdy, folks. I'm Cody with IronVerse Comics, and we're doing another IronVerse Comics interview. I'm really excited for this. Been chatting with this fella for a while. Kind of stumbled into each other, and the enthusiasm and just love of the work that he presents is infectious, and it's exactly what we wanted over at Ironverse Comics. And we got to chatting, and he ends up wanting to work with us, and that's been absolutely wonderful. But we're going to talk about that later on. What we're going to talk about first off is how he got into this medium, what he's doing, and maybe what he wants to do. Brandon, also known as Brainy Pixel on Twitter. Make sure to follow at Brainy Pixel. How you doing?
I am doing great. So blessed and busy. So lots of stuff going on, spinning lots of plates.
All right. That's good to hear. I mean, it's definitely better to be busy now than not busy. I would say these keeps
Absolutely,
yeah keeps some
absolutely.
forward move that can keep you going. So I love hearing
Yeah,
that.
no
So,
problem on that front on with me. So
well, right on. You want to talk about
I'm
some of
usually a
it?
busy guy. Yeah, sure, sure. What do you want to dive into first? You want to dive into
Well,
my sordid
usually
past or what I'm doing now? So
so sordid past, definitely the sordid past. You want to start at the beginning and kind of
yeah,
work that way. I'm curious how you got into content creation because you come from a bunch of different media. I got
I do.
into
I do.
comics because it was uh, a medium I could wrap my head around.
hmm
So I'm always curious other things because I find a lot of creatives are able to do that, and I'm jealous.
Well, I've only recently kind of wandered into the realm of comics. I've always wanted to play in that realm, but I didn't start out there. So, first of all, I'm old, so I was around when the dinosaurs were patrolling the Earth. So I bring a lot of that to the Ironverse work that I'm working on. But um, so I got my start actually when I was in about the fifth grade, not for obviously publishing work, but just for writing in general when I wrote my first short story, and everybody in the class and the teacher loved it, and I was kind of hooked after that. And so I said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I want to be a writer when I grow up. This is awesome." So I've always kind of written lots of different genres, fiction and poetry and nonfiction and history and all kind of stuff. Anything that I could write, I'm always game to jump in and try something new. But I didn't really get into the publishing world and actually getting paid to do what I love until kind of the mid 90s, I guess, when I was working in IT actually and discovered something called HTML. It was brand new at the time. I know that probably seems crazy to a lot of your listeners, but yes, there was a time before the internet. So, um, and I was alive and saw it, and I got hooked on this new programming language at the time called HTML, and I kind of did code and did IT stuff for a living, but I always wrote and created at night. And so HTML was this neat little kind of bridge between those two parts of my personality, kind of that the engineering or kind of the logical side,
Yeah.
and then kind of this artist and creative side, because you can use HTML to do almost anything on the web. And so back then, the web was a brand new frontier. You were coding everything by hand. There were no content management systems. There were no Discords. There were no WordPresses. None of that stuff existed. So you could literally just open Notepad and start creating. And so I kind of got hooked. And so I created a website originally it was called Paths of the Planewalkers, and later on became known as planewalker.com. And that was a website that was dedicated to my favorite role playing game setting, which is called Planescape, that Wizards of the Coast produced.
Yes.
And
Okay.
so,
I'm
I
a Magic
created this.
fan, so I kind of that there's some overlap there.
There absolutely is, and actually, Watsy brought a lot of that Planewalker stuff
Yeah.
into Magic with the Planewalkers, plural. Um, so but way back in the day,
Yeah.
I created this website, and it was kind of a fan site dedicated to the role-playing game setting. And I would write monsters, and I would write adventure hooks and NPCs and all sorts of things for it, and it started getting a lot of traction. People started really liking it, and eventually it became the official Planescape website for Wizards of the Coast. They actually tapped the website and said, "Hey, you're the official website." So that was pretty neat.
Nice.
Um, and through that, I was actually able to make some friends at Wizards of the Coast. And then when the OGL, or Open Gaming License, came out in kind of the late '90s, early aughts. Um, the gaming license essentially allowed anybody, as long as you use the core rule set that Wizards puts out and buy those core rule books, you can create your own games and sell them. And so it's kind of like for gaming what open source code was for programming. And lots of companies sprang up. Lots of these now we look at as monoliths in the gaming industry, like Paizo, for instance, was once just a D20 company. They were just an OGL company. And I entered a contest. There was one of the companies that I really liked called Bastion Press. They had an adventure contest, and a buddy of mine and I wrote an adventure, a 32-page adventure, and submitted it, and it won. And one of the prizes was a cash prize. That was the first thing I was ever paid to write. And then that led into me getting essentially a contract to write another adventure. That then led to writing, or helping to write, a source book for a campaign setting. And I was kind of off to the races at that point. And I worked for Bastion Press and Sovereign Games and Paizo and Green Ronin, and was in Dragon Magazine. And I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, this
Sounds
is the
like
job.
it. Excellent. Well, you had to obviously had shown the talent, ability, and drive. As same thing I felt right away. Very enthusiastic about creation. I love it. I'm glad it doesn't take a genius to recognize it.
Well,
And
yeah.
I'm
Well,
glad
thank you.
they kept using it as long as you wanted them to. I kind of assume.
Absolutely. Well, and
Yeah.
again, I've always been kind of, I kind of, I'm a self-termed creative cyclone. I'm always wanting to create, something new, and I'm very, very motivated. As we talked about early on in our conversations, Cody, about generating a product that are creating something that really becomes a product that people can see, that people can consume, whether they love it or they hate it, or it sells 1 million copies or it sells 5 copies. I really don't care about that point. I like seeing it up on the shelf, whether that shelf is digital or physical or whatever. That's what really gets me excited. That and
Oh.
collaboration.
Yeah, I love. I mean, that was the main thing. When I said I could get my heads around comic, I found that there was no base scripting method for comics. That took a lot of the pressure off. Prose writing, there's
Hmm.
all this judgment and history built into it, which is great if you can rise up to it. But I find it intimidating for my creation process to hop
Right.
into that right away. I've gotten better about that with short stories and such, but
Mhm.
uh, yeah. So with that, what brought you to comics?
So I guess it's really I mean I dabbled in comics before. Like I said, I've always loved the medium. I've
Yeah.
always been, I'm not a rabid comic collector, because I've never had kind of that kind of disposable income that I can spend a whole lot of money on comics. So I'm very, very selective about what I buy and read. But I love the marriage of story and art. That to me is just, it's phenomenal, right? And whether it's role playing games, which have that element, whether it's video games, which have that element to an extreme degree, to the point where I'm actually horribly addicted to video games. I can't even play them. I'm so badly addicted to them. Or comics, or movies, movies
Yeah.
and film, animation. Those things to me are just, I love escaping into a world that's not here, right? I love
Yeah.
this. I love the story, and you marry that with something beautiful. Beautiful art plus story is a huge buzz for me. So I'm in. Just immediately
Exactly.
I'm in.
All right. Well, the
And
first thing I've seen from you is Tenet's Tales, but is that where you started
Mhm.
with
No,
comics?
no, not with comics. No, I guess the first comic I actually wrote was, I wrote a little ash can. Oh man, this has probably been almost 20 years ago. Um, um, the My role playing game work kind of led to me getting into the fiction market, because I had a role playing game company approach me to write a novel for their campaign setting. They had a new campaign setting and they wanted some fiction to kind of bring it to life. And they were a small company. They had a really cool campaign setting called Crown, City of the Fallen. And so wound up writing what's called a mosaic novel, which is like 5 novellas that are all intertwined that tell
Oh,
one bigger story with 5 other authors that are all some of my best friends on the planet.
fun.
And when we were doing the convention circuit, we wanted a little kind of a handout, a giveaway that we could kind of seed the conventions with that would get people interested and have them come buy the book. And so we thought, why not do a little short comic that is essentially like a prequel to our novel? It sets the novel up, introduces all the characters, lets you know there's something going on about to happen, and then you come buy the book and find out what happens. And so I wrote that, and this is probably again about 20 years ago, and that was called Stirring Shadows, which was a prequel to our novel, which was called Skein of Shadows. And oh, by the way, we had Skein of Shadows before Wizards got it. They actually wound up running off with our novel title, but anyway, that's fine. They have better lawyers than me, so I'll let them have
Yeah,
it.
it's tends to be how they survive these days.
So that was my first kind of foray into comics, and it was just a little
Okay.
black and white ash can. I love doing it. Chris Faison, who's an artist in Birmingham, did that art for me, and had a blast with that. After that, I played around with comics some more. I actually developed my own role playing game a few years after that called Untold. It was actually the world's first card based role playing game. Everything that you needed to play the game was a card. There were no rule books, and so we wanted to do some comics to kind of highlight the world. It was a pretty unique world, and so I worked with a great artist named Tom Kizavat, who's in the Midwest, and an author out of Birmingham. And I was the creative director, and we wrote and actually produced several comics, although we were only able to get one out the door, and that one was called Gearless. And so I sent that over. I think you got that, Cody.
Yeah, let me see if second. But
Yeah.
yeah, right.
And then
Well,
after that, I wrote a comic called just a little ash can again, a little short comic called Sundered, for a Kickstarter. Another role playing game approached me and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to write a little short comic." That kind of it was very kind of Planescape esque game that they had created, and so I wrote a comic called Sundered for them. And ironically, where you kind of saw there being a low barrier to entry for comics, I saw it as a really high barrier of
huh,
entry because for me, it's when I first came into comics, I thought it was really, really hard to do because you don't have a lot of room. Right? I'm used to a novella. I'm used to tens of pages, and on a comic, you just got these little panels and these little word bubbles inside those little panels, and I can't say a whole lot. So I had to kind of back into comics and kind of unlearn a lot of the craft that I had learned for novels and for novellas and short stories. It was kind of weird. So
no, that's a great point because I've seen that. I've seen a lot of um, let's say Black Library for 40K and such. They'll get a lot of
mhm.
bigger authors. Dan Abnett is one of the few that can do both mediums pretty damn well. But there's a lot of
Mhm.
times where they'll tap an author that had written quite a few of their novels to adapt one of those novels or a story that they had in mind to comic form, and it doesn't serve the comic medium as well as it could. Mainly
Yeah.
because what you're saying is there's a lot that you have to let the art do, and
Mhm.
that's as a writer with a real strong vision, that can be very hard to find that
Right.
balance if you don't have the right collaborator.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of the other barrier for entry for me was finding that right collaborator because Tenet's Tales is my baby. It's a universe that I've worked on for the last 15 years. I've had ideas about it, and I've got 75 stories outlined and 6,000 years of history kind of world built into this title. But I always had a certain vision that I wanted to evoke with the art, and I always saw Tenet's Tales initially. Even though I've written a lot of it in prose, I always saw it as a comic first and foremost, essentially like a Christian Hellboy is what I was going for. And I really wanted to evoke that. I didn't want to copy Mignola's style, although I love his style. Um, but I wanted to get that kind of gritty, kind of dark, kind of I'm not really sure what's in the edges of my world, kind of feeling, and collaborated with lots of different artists, and it just never really clicked. Wasn't able to really find the right artist to kind of bring that vision to life until I ran into Mingo Fedorov, who did the Troublemaker, the Tennis Tales Troublemaker that I released just about a month ago. So.
Yeah, I really did notice, and I of course with how much you're talking about it, you definitely were looking for that Magnola look, and
Hmm.
that poster you've been giving away to again. Follow
Hmm.
Brainy Pixel on
Right.
Twitter. He's every 100 followers, he's giving away a poster, a full size, movie size poster of this
Hmm.
of the wonderful cover, which I am scraping to find the. You'd think I'd have this more ready, but I didn't. I thought I did, but no, it should be pretty easy grab that because I Gearless itself. Georgia Folks Gearless, gorgeous art on that, by the way. That
Thank you.
cover's very powerful,
Yeah,
in
thank you.
my opinion.
That's Aviv Or and Israel and Israel. I'm sorry. She is
Israeli.
from Israel. Yes,
Yeah.
she's from Israel. She's an Israeli artist originally, and I discovered her when I was working on Untold, that game that I mentioned earlier, the card-based
Yes.
role-playing game. And she did a lot of work for the card game itself. She's a brilliant spot artist and has since gone on to work for Wizards of the Coast. And
Okay.
I think the last I had any contact with her, she was working for a video game company in Europe.
That's
So,
probably the better gig. These.
yeah,
That's good to hear. Definitely
yeah,
good.
but super, super talented. She was a dream to work with. I've done a lot of art direction in my day, and she is at the top of the list that I would want to work with again. She's in the top 5. She's just brilliant to work with. So,
Right on. Wait, no, I'm there. I'm there. All right. I tend to mute my mic just in case. But okay,
oh
now
yeah,
I've
no
got
problem.
I've got the cover for Troublemaker out. That is
Okay,
not the
cool.
poster, if I remember right.
It's not. No, the poster I'm giving away is actually done by a guy named Arthur Asa out of Mexico. And if I could afford him to do the comic, he would be the choice premier. I mean,
Ah,
because
You know,
he both Arthur and Mingo, they both really get Tenet. They both totally understand the character. They know where I'm coming from. Uh, Arthur just has this. He has this sense about darkness and volume of space, and showing you just what you need to see and hiding everything else. Again, very similar to Mignola, but he has his own style. It's not at all what you would expect, or what when you hear someone talk about Mike Mignola, it's not the same look at all. It's his own kind of unique look, and I just fell in love with it. And he's done several covers for me, actually, for books that are yet to be written. And I would love for him to do. I would love for him to do the comic art for me, but I just can't afford him. He's way too expensive.
yeah, I get you how that goes. Um, I have the small version of the PDF you sent me, Open a Tent Tales, and the final page is that piece that's
Yes.
from this other artist that's
Yep.
previewing Tenet's Tales
Hmm.
from Below. You
That's
guys can
right.
get a poster of that every 100 followers. He goes through them
Hmm.
and shoots that out. People have been pretty stoked with the quality. I was surprised too. You went full size poster. We've got 1117 just to save a little bit here and there
Uh-huh.
posters. But this piece of art really does sing on that scale. So I love seeing
Oh
that.
yeah.
I'm glad people are so happy to engage with it too. Like you're saying, it's a gorgeous piece of art, and he knows where to pull back and where to pull out.
Yes.
Gorgeous
Yes.
lighting work, and horrific monsters and stoic hero.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
That's what it's all about in my
Yeah.
book, at least.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, um,
And
do you
that's
want to
actually a
talk a
great.
little bit about
I was just,
Tenet's
yeah,
Tales world, and
sure.
why people should check it out, and also is it the comic that you're giving out a promo code for?
It is, yes. So
Oh,
Troublemaker is the is I just did a little short 7-page book, really as kind of a promo to see gauge people's interest in the stories. I've written a few novellas for Tenet's Tales that are out there. You can get them on my Amazon page, but Tenet's Tales Troublemaker is just a little short story about Tenet in 1801, who's helping out some sharecroppers in Louisiana with a little problem that they have. An ACAR or a demon of troublemaking is giving them some problems, and so Tenet gets involved and has to see if he can if he can right some wrongs. But the concept of Tenet's Tales is a little bit different. It's a Christian comic, but I bill it as a Christian Hellboy that meets the X Files in a Dresden Files Doctor Strange world. So there is monsters and magic, and there's good guys and bad guys, and light and darkness, but light always wins. And it's not preachy. I didn't want to have a preachy comic because I don't like reading preachy comics. I like writing. I like writing and reading comics that are great and filled with good story and awesome adventures. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to produce with Tenet's Tales. And uh, Tenet, actually, the hero is actually a fallen angel, and so my the kind of backstory there is I take scripture from the Bible and I essentially kind of read between the lines. That's kind of where I like to fill in those gray spaces. And my story is that the angels that teamed up with Lucifer at the fall, they had to have free will to make that choice. They had to actually choose to do that, which is that's the definition of free will. And so after that fall, what I presuppose is that they didn't lose that free will; they still had it. And so that then the logical extension is that there may be angels, fallen angels, that think this is a bad rap and they really don't want to hang out with Lucifer and his demons anymore. And some might choose to be neutral, some might choose to be, they can't be good necessarily, but they can fight for good. And others might choose to continue to follow, the Prince of Lies. And so that kind of sets up the whole world of the Weird War, which is an eternal fight of good versus evil. And it gives rise to pretty much anything supernatural that you can imagine. So Bigfoot is going to show up in my Tenet's Tales because he's
Right.
essentially just a fallen. He's a fallen who's chosen to align himself with nature and step out of the great battle of good versus evil. He doesn't want anything to do with it. Um, and so it really gives me a lot of room to play now, and I can have all sorts of stories and creatures and organizations and allegiances to kind of tell these crazy wild stories.
Well, I mean that's a great there. I've read through this before. It's well written. Um, Main thing is the lettering might take a little too much room, but it's
Uh-huh.
where it the styles that are chosen to emphasize the
Uh-huh.
emotions being portrayed are wonderful. It's good lettering. It's just might
Awesome.
crowd the art a little in my eyes, but
Okay.
we might be putting with our work a little too small of lettering. Well, it's there's so many ways that all this. That's why I love comics. I don't think there's the right way is the way
Right.
that got it to sing with the reader, to harmonize with the reader.
Right.
So whatever works there. We
And
can always go back and forth on technical bits. That'll never end.
sure,
But
sure. And it could
this
just
I
be
mean this
Cody
is
that I'm
gorgeous.
old and I need bigger text. It could
Yeah,
just be
yeah, I
that.
mean that
So.
too. Could very well be. I mean, tends to be younger readers too lock onto larger text as well, and can
Right.
make it easier to follow. But then you try to minimize it as well, which you've done here at many. Is the letterer
Right.
also your artist, or did you do?
No, on Troublemaker, I actually did the lettering on this one.
Alrighty.
So, yep.
Well,
And
that's
in
way
others,
better
and
than my lettering. I do lettering to the finished art just so
uh-huh.
it works with the art properly with my pattern with the artist and how we kind of combine something and then it's different than what I
Hmm.
wrote, but it's not too different. It's kind of work it out. But
To meet in the
yeah,
middle.
I do that, but I still need to hire a letterer because I just
Hmm.
can't get my hands around it to a quality that would be worthy of the work. And this is
Right.
certainly up there with art and coloring. It doesn't take it away or
Thank you.
anything. It just smothers a little bit, a
Okay.
little,
Okay.
a
Well,
little.
I'll start reducing all those bubbles about 15%. That might make everybody happy. So.
Could be 5%. Could be five
Okay,
percent.
5.
Yeah,
That's
no,
even
it's
easier.
I can get real nitpicky. So also,
Yeah.
take everything with a
Hey.
grain of salt. I like to try and do a little bit of that because if all you're doing is blowing smoke, then nobody's really too much benefiting from it. Um,
Right. Well, that's another thing is I really try and I try to bring in some of my screenwriting props
yes.
now into my comic writing, and I try to keep that dialogue as tight and as concise as it can possibly be. So, one of the things that I dislike about modern comics, and again, I don't read a lot of them, but the ones that I do is the half a page word bubbles where we're giving a pontification speech in the middle of a battle. To me that's just not very realistic. If you're fighting somebody, you're gasping for every breath. You're not going to be giving a speech a la the Gettysburg Address. It's just not going to happen. So that's just my
No,
personal
yeah, well, I've seen some Batman issues. Tom King has a real problem, and Bendis also
preference.
from the Marvel. They have some problems with letting the art do the talking. They really have an
Yeah,
insecurity there, maybe. They're big
yeah.
names, so I could see being
Hmm.
insecure in that footing. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of times where the art is gorgeous, and it's just 15 word bubbles in the same conversation on one page spread.
Exactly,
And I
exactly.
just that blows my mind
Hmm.
because you're working with these wonderful talents. But it's a different
Yeah,
world at each level, and I don't judge. They can get work if that's working for the company, what have you. Doing something else over here.
yeah.
But
And I found it really depends on the artist that I'm working with. Some artists love the letter, some don't. They just want to do, inks, or they just want to do colors, or they just want to do layout, or what have you. Another one of the comics that I'm currently working on for Brainy Pixel right now is one for our Fourth World 4 property, which is a sci-fi show. It's going to be a 3D animated show, but we want to do a comic, a short 12-page comic to put out to get people interested and to have a little product that we can maybe, put out there, gauge the market. And that artist loves to do lettering, so I'm just letting him go to town and have a blast. And so he's doing all the lettering on that, which is less work on me, and he's doing a great job of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing that one come out. So
right on. So am I. Now that you're talking about that, what is Brainy Pixel, and what's it trying to
yeah,
accomplish, and what are its projects? Because I'm super
sure.
interested.
So Brainy Pixel is I'm half owner in the company. It's a Christian animation and production studio. Me and one of my real good friends, Michael Tonis, he's CEO, I'm the COO, and I'm also our chief creative officer. And essentially, we're just trying to build a small company that produces, animations, comics, novels, and games that are from a Christian standpoint. Again, not being preachy, but just communicating truth in a really compelling way. And we just love to start with awesome story and then layer on amazing visuals and give all the glory to God. And so we're working hard to make that happen. And we've got lots of shows in the works. One of them is called Cubekins. It's kind of a little show for 4 to 7 year olds. It's kind of like Veggie Tales set in Mayberry. Um, 3D animation. We're also building a game around that as well. And we are maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks away from closing a distribution deal on that show. So, and we're producing a 22-minute pilot currently that we're hoping will be done by early December that we can put out for people to see and consume. So, we're really excited about that. You're going to be hearing a lot about Cubekins in the next few weeks. Another one of our properties is the Divine Nine, which is kind of picks up where Cubekins leaves off with, kind of the 7 to 10, 7 to 11 year olds. And the Divine Nine is actually a 2D animated series that is going to be like a Christian Ben 10 meets Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's going to have, yeah, all kind of cool creatures and powers and all kind of stuff. And that's up on our website as well. That one still, we're doing all concept development on that. The pitch is complete, and I'm currently beginning to write scripts for those episodes, those first kind of core set of episodes now. And obviously, Tenet's Tales. I brought my love, that my baby, into the fold when we started the company, and so we've got that Tenet's Tales that kind of picks up about the 14 to 16, maybe to adult age range, and it gives something for the older kids, the college students, maybe the young adults to read and get into, but it still has a very solid Christian theme and message. Fourth World 4 kind of sits in between Tenet's Tales and Divine Nine. It's a sci-fi action adventure. It's what we call faith broad in the industry. which means it's family friendly and it's faith friendly, but there aren't necessarily any Christian type messages in that. All of the messages are based on Christian morals and ethics, and ultimately they're based on scripture. But since it's sci-fi, it's really tough to justify, having, salvation and Jesus and God in a sci-fi, because Jesus didn't die for aliens; he died for humans. So we decided to go faith broad with that, and so it's just a really cool story, that a lot of moral tales, and we kind of build that one as a Fantastic Four meets Star Trek, um, and that's the one we're building the comic for, the other comic that I was mentioning. And then finally, we have a little show that kind of started it all for our company, and that's the Pick Train. And that is a very early childhood. It's kind of like, toddler to 3 or 4 years old. We've also found a really powerful audience with English as a second language, folks out there who love that show, because Pick Train teaches you very, very basic stuff like your colors, your numbers, math, words, letter combinations. So it's kind of like a Sesame Street meets Thomas the Train, um, and that was actually, we just kind of created that one kind of on a spoof. We kind of wanted to create a 3D show together, Michael and I, and came up with this little idea. It was really simple to produce, and so we made the show and put it out on YouTube. It kind of caught and wound up landing over on TBN, which is the largest Christian network on the planet. They licensed that from us, and they've been licensing it from us for about 7 years now. And now it's kind of gone over to some other distribution channels as well. And now we're on about 7 different platforms with that show, and just got the contract and email today for the next streaming platform that Pick Train will be going on. So it's the little train that could. It's continuing to chug on down the track, and it's kind of making headway for us. So we kind of have, throughout the studio, we've kind of got shows for every age range from toddler all the way to college right now, which we're pretty happy with. So,
Yeah, no, it sounds like a solid platform. You can find what works that way and what doesn't. You
mhm,
can adjust. And no, I mean, it sounds like you're able to find success in what you put your energy. I love hearing that. I think a
yeah.
lot of people find, like we were talking about, find different media, find art in general intimidating. So
Mhm.
hearing all all that is wonderful, wonderful progress, and I'm stoked. I don't know
Thank you.
exactly what you see in IronVerse Comics exactly, but I appreciate you lending your time and energy towards us.
Oh,
Um,
well, with Ironverse, you had me
yeah,
at Weird West. You had me at Weird West, Cody. I'm like, I'm in.
right on.
And the art is just phenomenal. I mean, I love the art. The world you're creating is super cool, and I just want to create stuff again. I'm excited about working with creative people. I love to collaborate, and I love to write stuff that makes it to the market. And I see that with what you guys are doing, and the opportunity to tell Weird West stories with weird, alien type, maybe a little Cthulhu in there, you
A little
know
bit.
yeah, plague zombies, sign me up. I mean, hey, I mean, I don't know who wouldn't want to play in that world, honestly. So I am so excited,
Right.
and looking forward to writing more Golden Monk, and hopefully some of the Platinum Knight. I
Yeah.
can't, now that we've kind of resolved kind of what he's going to be about. I'm really, really stoked about jumping into that. So
Cool.
I'm in for the long haul, man. Sign
All
me up.
right. I love hearing that. I've got one other idea to run by you at some point that's
Sure.
board because it's funny that it came up in our talk the levels of audience you're trying to reach. That came
Hmm.
up is because Ironverse Comics skews towards mid-teen to adult, and
Okay.
I've had an idea in my head kicking around that would work better because I tried to write the script for it again and again and keep it in that mid-teen to adult, a little bit more gruesome and gory, and it just
Hmm.
didn't work. But I think there's a
Hmm.
perspective on it from a younger audience that might be worth exploring. So at some point, I'll
Yeah.
toss that into the writers' room and we'll kick it around a little bit. But Yeah.
That sounds like a killer idea. Yeah, I'm all I can't now I'm salivating. I'm ready to get after that. So
All righty. Well, I'm hoping. I'm hoping. What you've done for us has been excellent. What you do, it seems, is excellent, and people recognize it, support it, and it continues to grow. I love seeing.
thank you.
Where you just see yourself creating, right? That's the main goal.
Well,
So go for it.
yeah. I was going to say. I mean, I've been super blessed. I was able to finally go full time back on April Fool's Day, 2020, um, uh, into Brainy Pixel. So
Yeah.
we've had the company for going on, I think, 11 years now. So and we finally grown the company to the point where we were able to have somebody kind of go full time. We also have a feature film project that we're working on that's super top secret. I can't talk a whole lot about it, but and the feature film is getting a lot of eyeballs from people within the industry, both in Hollywood and in Christian media as well.
All
And
right.
so that's something that is kind of leading the charge, so to speak,
Oh,
and
okay.
really opening a lot of doors for us. And so I was blessed and able to go full time in April, and so I'm hoping that I can just keep creating. That
Yeah, exactly.
things will boxes will keep getting checked, and we'll still keep making money, and I'll be able to continue to create because that's what I've always wanted to do. I wasn't able to do that full time until 2020. I've always had a more than full time job and create on the side. And so for me, I've got this unique opportunity. I've got possibly a limited window of time, and so my normal desire to create and to produce is kind of been turned up to 11. I want to make sure that every day is a gift, and I want to make sure that I produce the most quality stuff that I can each and every day. So there aren't days where I sit, and just, veg out. Although I could, watch what's out on Netflix if I wanted to. I'm literally my own boss.
You know.
I'm driving myself, and I'm working 12, 11, 13, 14, 15-hour days, but I'm doing what I love, so it doesn't seem like
Oh,
work at all. So
exactly.
my prayer is that if God wills it, I can continue to do what He made me to do, and I know without a doubt it's create. It's create new things.
Well, I mean, if I was shaking that little ball, I'd say all signs point yes. It's from the past, but that doesn't mean anything. But I want to say thanks to El Crudo for showing up. Thank you. He said Magnola doesn't like shoulders. I'm unsure if your artist also doesn't like shoulders.
Yeah, that's very true. He doesn't, but yes, yes. So far, the artists that I deal with are okay with shoulders, so
Right
that's
on.
hilarious.
Also says the work looks dope, and that
Thank you.
speech in battles goes way back, but it's getting a little overboard. Yeah, I mean, I think Spider-Man kind of started that with a quip here and there, and then they kind of decided, oh well, we're going to resolve this whole emotional arc during this fight, and that doesn't
Yeah,
always work out.
and that is one of the things I like about maybe some of the more I don't want to say horror comics because they're not really
Yeah,
horror comics. I don't consider Magnola a horror comic, but
yeah,
some of
some
these
would.
darker
So
comics,
yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like
these
it's a
darker comics,
fantasy detective comic, but yeah.
and I love how we can have a whole page of just beautiful art that progresses the story without any words. It's like, oh, it's so refreshing. I just soak those pages up. I just love them. They're great, great, great pages. I love them. So
Oh, I'm a big
that's
fan
kind of
of those too. We try to do that with our covers too at IronVerse so far as I think
mm,
every cover we've done is it provides an extra scene in the comic
mhm.
that also pitches the comic to a
Yeah,
lot of the
absolutely.
time they try different things, and I know that's kind of the starting point for most comics. I would hope. Definitely back in the day, would try and maybe not a scene for the comic, but they would at least try and sum it up on the cover. With the amount of
Mhm.
variants and such these days, they don't do that as often. But
Right.
we definitely have made a point of that, as it always tends to be seen from the book. So the second
And
you
it
see the
should be.
book, you're reading it.
Yeah, it should be. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that drives me crazy about some comics is that what's on the cover is never in the book. It's like it's not even related. It's like I'm like I don't understand why
The
they choose this
cosplayer
as a cover.
covers, for instance, things like that.
Yeah,
It's tough. I mean, I understand trying to. There's a certain market out there that's not quite reading, it's collecting, and that's a different market, and it's a lucrative one. So
yeah,
sometimes that's where that comes from. I understand it, but it's certainly
mhm,
not beneficial to the storytelling. And
right,
that's
right,
where we're both coming from. The story. We want to
mhm,
share this creativity, this journey that we're putting ourselves and our art through with others.
yeah.
I want to do that from the second they see the book.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely, and all the way through it, and then as
yep,
soon as they're done, I want them to ache for the next story, I mean,
yeah,
and that's what Pixar does, right?
yeah.
Jumping over kinda into the animation space. I mean, they will spend 4 years on story, and in the animation space, that is
Yeah,
crazy
I was gonna.
town. That's just like that's nuts amounts of money, right? That's so much money, but they make that money back because that story is so finely tuned by the time it hits the screen. And people are going to cry and people are going to cheer and people are going to, they're going to feel it. And the only way you can do that is with an amazing story. And we're built. Humans are built to be storytellers and story listeners. So I feel very, very, very strongly that if you follow that model, the financial rewards will come. I
I
think they will.
I think so too, and I'm glad to hear proof of it. You don't always. You hear a lot more about failures because we indulge in those. We
Mhm.
like that. But I it's been a wonderful chat. I really appreciate the knowledge there. Now,
Mhm.
did we want to put out that promo code to folks?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
where to kind of snag it if folks are interested, because at this point, if you folks aren't interested in what this wonderful individual is doing and the wonderful work, then we certainly haven't done our job, and I am very interested.
yes, Cody. That code is yours to do with as you will, sir. So utilize it. So
All right, let me see, where'd you shoot it?
put it in your Twitter feed. So
Perfect.
it's
Like that, and
it's
I'll have
actually a
that in
little.
there, folks. This is for our channel. I really appreciate it. IronVerse Comics promo code for you folks to go get a copy of Tenet's. I can
Mhm.
snag that.
It is. I can give you the. I can read it off if you want. Oh man,
Oh,
yeah, you're gonna have to stick it in the chat.
yeah,
So
it's kind of what I thought. Right on. It's a jumble, I would
it
expect.
is a jumble. So it's totally secure and a hyperlink of excellent security. So
Right on. I feel completely safe.
just throw it in there. I can't see what you're doing, so you'll have to tell me or whatever. So
Yeah, I haven't seen it on my end yet, so when I do, I
okay,
will totally shoot it out.
right here, I'll stick it at the very bottom of our DM conversation. So
There it goes. Sent me. So, well, let
there
me
you go.
see if it, that link's just straight there. Oh, I see. I
Mhm,
see. I see. Okay, I see. Go ahead and copy that. Shoot
mhm. When
this
they click
down
that
into.
link, that'll take them right to it, and they don't have to. All they have to do is click "I want this," and they don't have to pay a cent. So
All right. Well, there you go. Enjoy some Christian Hellboy with a very stoic protagonist and a much more, it almost seems a more defined goal. Mignola had a goal in Hellboy, you can kind of tell, but it was very loose and he wanted to have a lot of room. This feels a bit
mhm.
more guided. You have a very direct story you want to tell here. I can tell that just from the.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this was, I love to all the Tenants Tales. And again, if you go over to Amazon and get the ones that are not novels or novellas or short stories, they're all set. They're based in the real world because, again, that's the world that we live in, right? And there's a spiritual realm that exists, behind the curtain, so to speak, that interfaces with this reality. But all of them are centered around a real place or a real legend, or a real creature that exists in mythology, but I'll do kind of a unique spin on them. So I really try and build that veracity into as many elements of this kind of fantasy supernatural world as I can, and I think it lends it a little feeling of depth and of
I
reality.
think so too, and it sounds like you're very concerned, as I would be as a storyteller, of having a good footing for your reader the second they step into this craziness,
Absolutely.
and
And I
having
want
those recognizable themes. That's how you do it. That's a great way to do it. I don't know if it's the only way. It's a great way.
Thank you, thank you, and I really am a big stickler for consistency. One of the things that drives me crazy when I read comics is, on page 3, we're, punching a planet in half, and then on page 4, we can't bend an iron bar for some reason, or
Hmm.
those things drive me nuts. So I'm a stickler for consistency across all the stories, and I try really hard to never contradict myself or get into one of those kind of logical, do loops where you kind of set a trap for yourself. And I've got a couple of really good friends who are kind of like they kind of keep me honest when it comes to things like that.
Oh, good. No, that for sure. Is there a novella or novel that you would like to point them directly to start, if they're interested in a more prose read in this universe?
Yeah, sure. They can go over to Amazon. I can give you a link right quick, show you where I'm at over
Well, I've
there.
got
Let me
your
grab it
author
right
one.
quick.
I got that all
Okay,
set up. I'll shoot that into chat again. But is there a specific
awesome.
like issue you would like,
Uh,
or where would the author recommend folks start?
Yeah, if you want to get into Tenet's Tales, then probably the best place to start is The Truth Is Out There. That's probably the best one to jump into. A lot of the stuff that I've written is actually, people don't know this, but it's actually in the same universe as Tenet. It's the Weird War universe, except for maybe Russian Ape Men from Space. That one's not. But a lot of these stories that I've written are in the same universe, and they're just kind of parts of the puzzle that I'm slowly building. And one day I'll be able to kind of reveal it like the MCU, and you'll be like, "Whoa, all this was connected from the get go." So
Yeah, that's how to do it. Or like the Dark Tower and Stephen King.
exactly,
Yeah, that's the
exactly.
big one there. I mean, and I don't know
Hmm.
how he connected all that drug use into one cohesion, but he did. He
You did
did.
it
So
masterfully.
he did. So, so I've got the truth is out there, up on the
Good.
screen, folks. Dollar on Kindle if you want another read.
Mhm.
In the Tenet's Tale. It's a quick novella, 28 pages. It
It is.
says there. You'll get right through it and get another great tale in that universe. Free comic
Mhm.
link in chat as well, right above it. Um,
Absolutely.
if there's any questions in chat, now would be a great time to ask them, folks. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to be thinking on some. Did you have any questions for me, Brandon? It's been wonderful meeting and talking to you. I'm nervous before all these things occur, and then the second they're in, I'm chatting with a good folk,
Yeah,
and all of that tension
absolutely.
just goes.
So yeah, I would love to know a little bit more about what inspired you with the Ironverse universe.
Well, when I was a kid, I not a kid, I'd say high school age. You're coming to terms with what it means to be a kid because it's almost over, and what it means to be an
Mhm.
adult because it's almost begun, and
Right.
that perspective, I had a rough time.
Mhm.
And through that, I found comics, and then I found edgier comics like Hellboy. My Hellboy
Mhm.
was Ghost Rider Road to Damnation by Garth Ennis and
Okay.
Clayton Crane. The art in
Gotcha.
that book just blew me away. I never seen artistry like that, and it was just so
Mhm.
badass. It was
Mhm.
just this level of edgy coolness that, of course, the teenage part of me was like, "Oh wow, they do this." And that character would be playing around with Spider-Man in the same universe. And I found like,
Right.
okay, so this is even though they try to be perceived as this kiddie kind of thing, they've really added layers and layers of this. And then I discovered the Punisher, and I got really into Garth Ennis's run on Punisher Max.
Mhm.
It's very brutal, very edgy, very gory, very sadistic in many ways. But
Mhm.
it was what I needed to kind of get a different perspective on the medium. That got me hooked. And like you,
Gotcha.
I also had a fondness for writing in my youth. Got some accolades for it, but I had problems with authority. I still do. Um,
Mhm.
and so I never really wanted to conform to a system. So I never really got too far into any of the more traditional ways of this, contests, things like
Mhm.
that. When I found that comics didn't really have a set way to break in, didn't have a set way
Mhm.
of writing, didn't have a set way of doing the art, didn't have a set story, and there was basically no limit to the imagination that you could portray to your readers. I was
Mhm.
hooked, and I started writing scripts. And the original idea was I wanted a heavy metal Justice League. I wanted something like a Midnight Suns, but more of a traditional comic universe. And then I
Gotcha.
took that idea and I filtered it through the hard things I was going through. Still am. It's part of life. All these vices and things physically manifested, the hard world we live in. And
Mhm.
I tried to make a character that was almost from my perspective, where I take as many perspectives, as many human lives, as many different ways of feeling out this reality, and throw them into one mind. Don't allow that
Mhm.
mind to kill itself, because the amount of weight
Mhm.
and horror that it would bear would be very tough to go if you had a way out. It would be very hard to justify.
Right.
So that's the immortality bit, and then I just kind of took that and played around with the things I was liking at the time: RoboCop, Mad Max,
Mhm.
Jonah Hex, a bunch of these harder, the Man with No Name, and I just kind of smooshed them together. And once I had kind of felt out Jack and I wrote a bunch of scripts for him, I started designing the overall idea, which was of Ironverse, which is these four pillars that are just negative things that were willed into existence by negative action and by deceit,
Mhm.
and their opposition on a galactic universal scale. Things trying to deal with them, what would happen, and just putting normal folks, in some cases some very abnormal folks, uh, in this position, and what would they do? And that's
Right.
kind of what it
Right.
was. Ironverse really is those four horsemen and trying to stop them when they were given too much time to grow and too much power.
Yeah, just every time I read Jack and I read about Jack, I see him as kind of this tragic Superman who, like, literally like a Superman, right? Who took who made a lot of bad choices,
Yes.
and now he bears the guilt of all those choices, but he can't really do anything about any of them. He can't fix a lot of those wrongs that that he's committed, and so he's still trudging on. He's this everyman, right? And he wants to correct things as much as he can, but he's just weighted down. And so it's this really cool little kind of niche that you've created for this kind of tragic hero. And it really does. It kind of lays the groundwork for this whole universe, and it sets you up to be able to play against that in lots of cool ways. So you've done a
I
really good job with it.
Well, thank you, and I'm excited to see what you do with it. More that you do with it. Jack is that grounding. I think is the damn
Mhm.
fine entry point, because he's supposed to be a representation of everybody's struggles, that that
Yeah.
against these things. But for instance, with the Golden Monk, it's to do that same thing, but to have fun with it. Cactus Coyote
Hmm.
is also a very tragic character,
Hmm.
but he's more of the down on his luck, but I'm still gonna win no matter what. He's the compulsive gambler who fails every damn time, but still has hope. That hope is a good thing, but it leads him to tragedy. And so that's kind of the Cactus Coyote exploration of this universe.
Okay.
And with Monk, I think it's going to be a little more of a exercise of will with a goal, more than Jack
Hmm.
has currently, more than Coyote has right now, because Jack and Coyote are more affected by the world, whereas Monk is put into the world with a goal. And
Right, and
yeah,
I think I see Monk as well, and feel free to correct me if
yeah,
I'm wrong, because I mean, hey, he's out of your character mind. So,
yeah,
but I kind of see him as well. He definitely has this very specific goal. He's got to get this thing done. He's kind of walking into this world, at least in my mind, with kind of eyes wide open and almost a little bit of an innocence, because he's not been
yes,
around, you know. And so he's kind of perceiving things for the first time and figuring things out as he goes. And he's got this connection to nature, which gives him an innate hope, you know. Although it's mixed with despair, because there's not a lot of verdant nature out there.
oh,
It's ruined for the most part. But I kind of want to play him almost as kind of this little glimmer of hope, kind of like a Samwise character, right? Where he's
hmm
going through all this rough stuff, but he never gives up hope. and he's always got this. He's always carrying that little box of salt in his pocket because
Yeah.
it's a piece of the Shire. And that's kind of the way I see him. And if that's wrong, let me know. I'll write him
No,
differently. I'll write him
absolutely,
however.
and that's I think when I put it, really, he has the little. I visualize it as a talking bonsai tree, just as a goof, but
Yeah.
it could be any kind of form of nature that guides this old man, dementia-riddled brain with the mind of a 20, 30-year-old disco fiend through this to get this job done. And I think that connection to nature, that bonsai tree, that bit is salt.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that
Absolutely.
push.
The fact that he loves disco, as do I, that's money. I mean,
That was
that's
dollar
I mean,
coins. He keeps coming up with these things where it just needs a little spice to it, a little something fun. And he's been
he's a
really
little funk,
great at doing it. Yeah,
right?
he's got a little bit of funk. And in Ironverse Comics, disco was the music of the revolution, and that's what got him kicked out of the country. It's
Oh,
a reverse
okay.
Bruce Lee, is kind of how I
Gotcha.
had it. Is where Bruce Lee
Love
was
it.
kicked out of China for fighting. Well, this guy Stephen Hugh, he was kicked out of America and Famine Inc. property when it's basically a corporatocracy already. He's kicked out for
Gotcha.
that to go and hide in the mountains because he's gonna get in some more serious, like he's gonna get a chip implanted into his brain or something. So so
Ah,
so it was that escape, and he connects and then gets set forth on this path, which hopefully is a
awesome,
pretty fun one.
awesome.
I
That's
think
good to know.
you
I'm loving that that disco is the music of the revolution. So
That's what, yeah, that's what I was saying. It's kind of funny because it was kind of almost the opposite. It was very
Mhm.
kind of a conformity, but it was also excess. But in this, it would be fighting against that. So I thought that was hilarious myself.
Awesome.
So yeah.
I had a blast writing that first story. I mean, it was
Oh, that
just
was
so much
fun.
fun. So
Yeah, no, that was a fun
looking
fun
forward.
idea too, and we had a president of it, already having some kind of wolf creature in there, so it's nothing
Uh,
out of the ordinary and and man, just again, thank you for engaging with us. I really do
yeah,
appreciate it. We've got a lot we want to get done, and we do help, so
awesome.
we
Awesome.
appreciate it very much. I certainly do.
And that's one of the things I would encourage, any listeners out there. If you are a creative and you feel like maybe, I'm never going to make it in, or I'm never going to be able to be like these guys, or to be like, a Mignola or whatever, I would encourage you to take that first step. It doesn't cost anything to send an email. It doesn't cost anything to, comment on someone's post and say, hey, this is really great. I'd love to help. Um, one of the best ways to learn is to do. That's what I started doing. I started with a fan site for a role playing game. And before I knew what was going on, I was the official website and I was talking to Wizards of the Coast on the phone. So, just work hard and don't be afraid to ask. The worst somebody can say is no. And if that's the case, okay, great. I go in a different direction. So,
Exactly, and that's the thing too. And to me, what ends up being the worst is a ghosting, a no response, a non-response. That tends to hurt almost the most. But even then,
mhm,
you, if there wasn't enthusiasm or an engagement with you anyway, that collaboration wouldn't have. That's kind of where I
absolutely.
come from. Is if even a lot of the folks that have reached out to me to work with me, or vice versa. Um, quite a few, like during our logos, we had a few people who were like they in their mind they had the job already, and they were
Right.
really quite odd about that. Never had really experienced somebody with that level of I'm gonna say
Hubris.
arrogance. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
hubris. Hubris is better. Hubris is better. But it's you know you still got to do it. Got to do. I spent all day today with correspondence trying to make things work today, and
Mhm.
it went well. But you got to do it. Like you're saying, everybody starts somewhere, and don't be afraid of starting by looking
The
at the
bottom.
mountaintop. Just keep walking.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's like, with you guys, I am just excited to be part of the team, and I don't wanna come in and say, "Oh, well, I've done blah, blah, and yak, yak, and I need to be at the top." No, I wanna start at the bottom. I wanna learn this world from the bottom up, and I wanna work with you guys. I wanna collaborate. But I I don't have any pride invested, in my success or failure as it comes to
Yeah.
a writer. I got rid of all that stuff when I was in the 10th grade, right? I stopped I stopped worrying about what people thought about me in the 10th grade and just started banging my own drum and just enjoying just doing that. I would definitely encourage creatives out there because that's a big problem a lot of creatives have is they put so much of their self-worth into what they're creating. And you got to understand that what you're creating is not you and it doesn't define you. It's your expression, right? It's something that you created. But at that point, it's over. You know, once you've gotten it done, that connection is over. And if somebody, says, oh, well, you're Superman or you're Captain America, his chest is too big, right? To go with a
Yeah, yeah,
Sylvester joke.
yeah,
Well, okay, well, that's fine. But at least I drew him, and it's
yeah.
out
Right.
there and I've done it, and I'm going to draw another one tomorrow or next week or whatever. So I would encourage, the folks out there to try not. It's hard to do. You got to get your head wrapped around it, but it is possible to decouple yourself from your creation and just create for the joy of it. Just create to have something done and say, yeah, I worked on that and I had a blast and I learned so much and I met some cool people and
Uh,
then
that's
move
been
on to the next
my
project.
number one favorite bit of it is honestly just putting the intent and the will out there and putting an honest expression of yourself out there. People tend to latch on and enjoy that. One form
Absolutely.
or
They can.
another. It might not be this massive audience right away, or it may be this massive audience right away. That's not shouldn't be part of the equation of starting.
Mhm. Yeah, you're exactly right, Cody. It goes exactly back to the conversation we were having about Pixar earlier, how they spend so much time on that story. But also one of the things, like if you read Ed Catmull's, he wrote a book on Pixar and basically the principles of how they guide Pixar. I'll have to think of the name of the book and send it to you. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I think
Yeah.
it's creative. I think it's Creativity Inc. But he said that nobody owns the story, right? That anybody from the lowest intern to, Lassiter or Ed Catmull himself has equal say when they're in one of those story meetings. Everybody everybody's opinion is equally valid. So there's no egos involved. It's everybody at the table, and we can all say either that stinks or that's great, or we need to change it or do this. And all opinions are valid. And that's the heart of creation. And that is so much fun.
It
If you
is.
ever get a piece of that, you're not going to want to let go because it's awesome.
Oh, it's absolutely awesome because you find out that at the end of it all, you've made something so much better than you could have by yourself.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely. And
I
people
mean every
feel that.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and people feel that. They get it. They get it through the art, they get it through the story, they get it through the music, whatever it is you're creating. They feel that honest expression of that creativity. And honestly, for me as a Christian, I feel that here on earth, that's the most true expression of creativity that we can actually express is when there's no pride involved, there's no worry, there's no fear, and it's just creating for the sake of creating. It's the joy, the literal joy of creation. And so that's what I strive for. And whenever I work
Right
with
on.
anybody, that's what I
Well,
strive for.
there's a reason. I tend to believe there's a reason people meet. Encounters, a
Absolutely.
reason behind encounters.
There are no
I am
accidents.
again. I'm blessed.
Absolutely.
Thank you for reaching out again. I just, if I remember right, it was just me throwing out. We're looking for a little bit more help, one way or another, and you saw it and saw what we did and
Yeah,
appreciated it. And I'm
absolutely.
open to again. I try to be open because I don't know what I'm doing. Most of the time, there's no pride in that. I don't know what I'm
Yeah,
doing. So if I can get help and it's honest,
absolutely.
strong help, if I could help it, then I think everything's that I'm working on that I'm doing gonna benefit from. So
And
far,
honestly,
that's been a good star to steer the ship by.
yeah, and if I knew what I was doing, I probably wouldn't wanna be doing it because 'cause it'd be
Yeah,
boring.
yeah,
You know?
it's
I
true.
love
Yeah, no, you'd be going through
I
the
like
same
the
motions.
exploration.
Yeah.
I love the exploration. I love doing something new every day. It's totally awesome. S
Well, I want to thank folks who showed up. Let me see if there's any other questions? Josh the Amazing Animator was in earlier, asked sup dogs. Well, we were chatting for a while. That was what was sup. Rusty, thank you so much again for showing up early again. He tends to do that. He's at work about the time that we're doing this.
Awesome.
He's been there.
A regular.
Yes, he's been a regular. I really appreciate that. Um, let's see here. He also commented that Cactus was a fun read. I'm glad. I'm hoping to get more comments on that work in particular, just because of it being the most seen work in Ironverse. Might not be. It's. I'm very confused on the standing there because it's been seen about 33,000 times or something. But
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, I think so. We entered the Shonen Tezuka manga contest this year when it was open to international with it, and that got us a ton of
Oh,
views, and that's been great. It means that that audience actually does have an interest in our Western manga work, which is, I think, surprise dollar coins more because he's pretty down on himself on his work, and he is prolific. Uh, I mean, he's written so much of this character and just these wonderful ups and down arcs. We're gonna have to
mm,
get those to you at some point because I definitely want more
yeah,
people to read, and you'll get an idea more of what we're doing. Um,
okay, yeah, that'd be great. And
yeah.
hey, let me kind of footnote that for a minute for any fans that are out there listening. It is so, so, so wonderful when you give us feedback as
Yes.
creators. Even if it's just one sentence, take the
No.
time to write that one sentence. If it's just two emoticons or whatever you call those
Yeah.
things, send them because we're out here as creators and we're kind of screaming into the void, or at least we feel like we are sometimes.
Yes.
And we just want to know that people either are reading it. Number one, that'd be great to know. Number
Yes.
two, like it? Do you hate it? And if you don't like it, what can we change to make it better? Because
Yeah.
while there are some things from a story standpoint we might not change, there are others that we're more than happy to change to please our readers. So try to look at this as a back and forth conversation. It's one of the things I would encourage people if you're reading novels or short stories or comics. There's so many ways now to communicate with your creators. Take
Oh.
advantage of them and don't be afraid to reach out and just say, hey, that last issue was great, but page 3, you really need to work on your lettering, or something like that. So,
Well, I mean, that's what I've tried to do with issues 1 and 2, or after issues 1 and 2 with issue 3. I tried to adapt to the with the amount of positive feedback we got. I get concerned because I know that no work is perfect, and so I can't be complacent in that positive feedback, those thumbs up. And so
mhm,
when I get a well conceived critique, not quite a criticism, a critique, then that
mhm,
makes a massive difference in my perception and my ability to grow as a creator.
ab-
There's
absolutely,
something
absolutely,
there that I didn't see that you saw, or you saw this thing a certain way that I didn't intend. I want to know how to communicate better. I want that comic to be your favorite comic on your stack, not the
mhm,
third, fourth favorite comic on that stack. And
absolutely,
um, and we, I mean, we can make guesses. We could try, but without like hard evidence of, well, I didn't like this, or I thought you could have done this better. It's very difficult to do that. um,
right.
and I'm excited myself for the release Jack 3 here, the digital, at the end of the
Mhm,
month, because it's been quite a long time coming on this, and I didn't expect folks to actually help us manifest it. And you did the last day, 40% of our funding, which was crazy. You fans are insane. And so we've been working our butts off to get something really fun out, and something equally thoughtful, and that will guide and set the path for the rest of what we're trying to do. And
and what
I
I've
really
seen
want to
looks
know if that
beautiful.
lands.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing so far, it looks beautiful. I can't wait
Yeah.
to see the sneak peek. And hey, that's another great reason to volunteer. Even if it's just as a proofreader, you get to see it early, folks. So, you know, volunteer to help. So,
Right on. Well, no, man, again, thank you so much. Looks like we're about the time I averagely end. If there's something
okay.
else you wanted to talk about, that'd be great. Otherwise, looks like Rusty said, cheers for the stream. Cheers for watching it. Thank you so much. Um, Cactus Coyote was reminiscent of the wackiness of comics back in the 70s. That's what he was going for. He knew where his talents lie and what he could do. So I'm glad you caught that. And yeah, he really enjoyed it and needs more confidence in his creative work. Yes, yes, he does. He's also a novelist. He's written quite a few things. Yeah, he's been a backbone for us over here at IronVerse Comics for a while. He kept me going, and has really carved out what the greater universe, once we leave Earth on IronVerse Comics, is going to be. I think you folks will love it because of how deep he goes with this lore. I think you've looked at our compendium,
I have,
Brandon, I'm
yes,
assumed, and
many,
you got an
many times.
idea.
Oh yeah.
You've definitely got an idea. And
I've seen the tip of the iceberg. I still want to see the rest of the iceberg though.
yeah,
So
you got because that's just the mechanics, right? It's not
yeah.
that it's the story that you're building with those mechanics that's really the iceberg.
Right.
So
Right.
we're working on it, and I'm so happy to be working on it with you. I was very
Likewise.
pleased with this conversation, and
Yeah, me too.
I can't wait to have another and
Yeah.
to continue our work and continue sharing. Folks, make sure to check out Tenet Tales. Free link in chat. Free. Go check it out. You like comics? It's a free one. I mean, we had a whole day for it. This is another day. And
Right.
definitely check out the Amazon link too. $1 a piece for those novellas. It looked like, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of work there from this very passionate talent. Definitely deserves your support. And yeah, I think that'll do it, folks.
All
I
right.
appreciate your time. Um,
Likewise, Cody.
Thank you, and I appreciate you folks for showing up and joining us on another IronVerse Comics interviews. I'm Cody Fernandez. This has been Brandon Hollinsworth, and we will catch you on that old rusty IronVerse Comics trail. Thank you so very much.
Good night, everybody.